It's great to have you back. Joining us for the last session of the day here at the Product Led Festival. It's going to be an excellent session. It's last, but certainly not least. I'm really looking forward to this one. So I'm glad that you have joined us. Just before we get started, I'm just going to give you a last reminder for questions. You can drop those in the chat box. You don't need to wait until the end of the session. Drop them in as you think of them, and we will tackle them when we get to the end of the session. So just put them in as you think of them. Last reminder, productledalliance.com. Go and check that out if you haven't already. Lots of really great resources on there. You can access our free Slack community. We've got 7,500 product-led pros in there. So come and join us. What are you waiting for? I hope to see you there. Now, I will invite the special speaker to join me on the stage. And while he does turn his camera on, I will introduce him briefly. So we are very lucky to be joined by Rahul Agrawal, who is a product manager at Hasura. Now, Rahul is going to be talking about the role of ethics in product-led growth, which I think is going to be a really interesting topic, and one that maybe doesn't get the attention it rightly deserves. I think that's probably increasing more recently, but I think it's always excellent to have someone talking about this. So without any further ado, I'll hand straight over to you, Rahul.
Thanks a lot, James, and hi, everyone. I'm also excited to talk about the role of ethics in product-led growth today. So let's jump right into the session. Since the last session, you must have gone through great programming throughout the day at the Product-led Festival. And the objective of this session is to talk about the role of ethics, and I'll go by the typical structure. Why think about ethics? What does ethic mean, or in the modern world, and how to really be effective and be ethical while implementing your product-led growth strategies. But before we start, I want to mention that why am I qualified to talk on this topic, and how did I enable myself? And the simple answer there is working on technology platforms almost throughout my life, working on e-commerce platforms and B2C on-demand platform in India and Southeast Asia, and for the past 4 or 5 years working on B2B platform as a service software technology such as API management platform at Boomi, and currently working on the GraphQL engine at Hasura, and working with these growing startups and great people. I will share some of the lessons I've learned on the way around how to think about ethics, and by delivering product-led growth, the lessons we learned, sharing all of that today would be the top of mind for me. So let's look into what is happening in the market. I think that would help us ground in reality and understand the why we need to talk about ethics in the first place. Now, product-led growth is everywhere. And some of the companies which are on the screen right now, especially DoorDash, Amazon, Facebook, they are great examples of companies executing product-led growth. They started as small startups doing a very specific use case for a specific set of users, executed very well, and listened to the users, and finally became these large companies, as all of you use right now. But the consequences in ethics have been kind of put on the side throughout this whole product-led growth journey. We see problems with Facebook around data privacy and addiction for teenagers, especially on Instagram. We see how bad working conditions are there in Amazon, and how the promise of one-day delivery is good for consumers, but not good for the employees on the other end of the spectrum. We have DoorDash, excellent product-led growth company, I would say the poster child of product-led growth for a while. But for a period of time, it was keeping the tips for itself and not giving it to the drivers. So just think about that. Uber, our favorite company, knowingly broke laws in dozens of countries and misled people about the driver benefits of a gig worker model. For the consumer, yes, you're getting a cab in like 5 minutes, but imagine on the driver's side the implications there. And I've put Theranos here, even though it's not a successful company, but I just want to have that lesson and top of mind for everyone that it's all about growth and technology, but ultimately it turned out to be a fraud, right? So you have all company spectrum here, but you see there's some problem behind using technology to deliver solutions to consumers and businesses. So to continue with that, there is also the emergence of AI, and now machine learning is almost pervasive in everything we touch and consume on the internet or in our homes or in our daily lives. And let's think about the state of AI right now. And there are many blind spots with AI. And if majority of the world in the coming years will use pre-built models, this poses a huge risk. Some of the blind spots in AI include the lack of transparency of the AI systems, the fairness of the algorithms, which are backing the entire machine learning experience, the dependence on humans for artificial intelligence to be effective, and the fourth blind spot is that all our models take care of only humans into the picture, but our lives are surrounded by other creatures, other animals as well, and that's not even taken into consideration right now. So these are some of the blind spots. There are many research papers on blind spots. I picked this one which I'm showing, and just to bring up these 4 blind spots in artificial intelligence right now. And to see this in practice, let us look at our beloved tech company, Google. And this is a controversial result from the Google open source BERT model, where you can see you are asking a very typical question about where does a man work or where does a woman work, and you're getting some questionable gender stereotypes. So if this is the state of the AI, and this is where all of our products are going to use AI behind the scene, there is a problem. And this shouts very loudly why we need to start thinking about ethics, and as product managers, as software engineers, as leaders in the technology world, why it's so important for us to think about ethics. And then there's a problem of accountability. And very simply put, accountability is something that is missing, and people making voices are not tolerated in big tech anymore. It's not a one-off thing. It happened last year when the AI researcher Mitchell was fired after critical work at Google, and she happened to join Hugging Face, where she works on ethical fairness and using AI with a fair lens. But then that's not an isolated instance. We have other Google engineers quitting over company's treatment of AI researcher, and very recently another researcher leaving Google to save AI's future. And these headlines, if they're not grabbing your attention right now, when will they grab your attention? That's my point. So you see that there is inherent problem with how we are using technology, and then accountability is missing, because as we say that revenue growth is where everyone is going towards, and this is an important concept we kind of glide over. Which brings me to the what. So I think we were talking about why I think we're on the same page, why we need to think about ethics in the first place. And this is a traditional meaning of ethics that I borrowed from Britannica. And let us move into what, with the definition of ethics. And it's called, the important things to focus on here are what is considered morally good and bad, and what is considered morally right and wrong. And ethics define a set of values or principles along which you judge on the spectrum from good to bad and right and wrong. So what do we do now? Like we know why we need to think about ethics and what's the definition of ethics, but how should we go about being more ethical as people who build technology products? If product-led growth is here to stay, then how to navigate this new world? Well, this is a framework to think about it in layers of depth. I would say customer, usage, and employees. And in the rest of the session, I will go into all of these in depth and give you kind of a mental model how to be ethical by keeping these three things in mind: customer, usage, and employees. So let's look at customer as the number one pillar of how to be ethical. And I would say just being product led is ethical in itself. The main point here is that being a product led company helps you adhere to ethics. Yes, there is usage and employees, which we will go into later, but this is the first check. And what do I mean by that? I mean that usage matters the most. And the concept that makes product led growth itself ethical is that it is tough to hold on to this principle of usage matters most, and that we are building technology products for the user. Now, the essence of product led growth is all about making the user happy, making the user function better in their lives. And being the user in the room is tough because engineering wants to build what they like, and leaders have their own opinions. How to be data oriented when you don't have data if you're building something new? So usually either of these parties win when feature is getting developed. Either you just veto with what the leaders are saying, or you just go along with what engineering wants to build. But as product leaders, we really need to be the user in the room. And just the fact of being the user in the room and focusing on usage is ethical enough to start the journey, I'm saying. And secondly, the revenue side of it. So building shelfware that no one uses is ethical because you bring in talented people into a room or remotely and make them work for multiple hours for something which is not getting used at the end of the day, just because sales and marketing is asking what to build and not listening to users in the process. So these are like two pillars under the customer theme, which I wanted to discuss about, is that being user in the room really helps in being ethical. And secondly, yes, taking sales and marketing as a data point, but not creating shelfware, not creating something which is not creating value in the society is unethical in itself. So this touches about the first pillar of the model which I mentioned, which was customer, is that if you are implementing product-led growth, if you are following good principles around user empathy and user journeys, then I think you're on the right path. And it is sequential in that way. And it's not that we can go into the usage pillar right now and say that we are doing a good job here, the rest don't matter. That's why I've presented in such a manner, is that it's kind of sequential. You go from customer to usage, and then you finally make sure that you take care of the employees as well. So before we look into these two layers, I want to introduce, or I want to provide some more research on another thing which is not totally brought into attention a lot. And while going into that aspect, I think the usage part will become very clear. And that, yes, you might be a little surprised why this slide is here, but just bear with me as we move throughout the presentation. And the research which I'm showing you right now is that slavery as an industry is still dominant throughout the world. This is a global modern slavery index map which you are seeing. The darker countries on this map have more problems of modern slavery than the lighter countries. But you see there is no white really on the map. It is usually dark in color. So I'm saying that there's more information now. By default, everyone is informed. So the definition of slavery has also changed. And more visibility into how slavery is still prevalent will help us as we build technology products. You looked at DoorDash, you looked at Uber, how they are providing value to consumer while taking the value from some other human beings, whether they are delivery people or drivers. And the global modern slavery index, the 4 things it really measures is basic needs, inequality, disenfranchisement, and effects of conflict and government issues. So if modern slavery is still prevalent and we are somehow still leveraging all to build products, I think it's time for us to redefine ethics. in this with this more information around how the world is working. And there is increased knowledge of how the world is working. There is advent of mega tools with technology. So by updating the definition of ethics, it becomes more practical, it catches the eye, and it becomes a priority. With technology, consequences are much more significant, and we need to make sure that the democratizing technology does not happen at the expense of human life. So this definition of ethics is like the amount of slavery you can tolerate, applied to any system to measure the proportion of money, that is blood money, a set of principles to prevent society from enabling, aiding, and profiting from inequality. Now, if you see it from this lens, then while building products, you will not think of ethics as a secondary activity or something which can be taught afterwards. If you start reading ethics with this lens, it becomes more prevalent and hopefully more practical as you build products. So with that, I think revisiting the definition of ethics based on certain trends in the world right now, let's look at how the checks and balances which will help you with the second pillar of the framework, which is usage. And there are 5 aspects to it. Now, usage can lead to addiction, as you could see with social media. Usage can also hinder privacy. At the expense of privacy of users, you are creating growth. Usage also depends on responsibility, how the product is being used. Is it being used to harm other people? Accessibility, usage matters. That is the product or solution only accessible to few people in the world, or is it highly accessible and really democratizing technology? And sustainability in its effect of gaining market share or gaining voice of share in the market. Are you really thinking about how it's impacting the environment and nature itself? So you see these 5 pillars around usage. And in the next slide, I would deep dive into 2 of these pillars to just give you a flavor of how to think about practicing these. So addiction, I would say, both of these, I would say, are ethical choices that you as a product leader need to make early in the product development cycle. These are thinking about these earlier would help, and it's more like design and feature than a bug. So addiction, I would say, we have all looked at the hooked model of giving certain reward to the user so that the user comes back to the platform. Well, I would say that's a dark pattern. That's a pattern which has been used by tobacco and cola companies in 50 years back. And now we are using the same flywheel hooked model on our software products. Just because it is a new way of making product doesn't mean that we are not doing the same mistakes we've been doing half a century ago. So just take a step back and see actually whether the hooked model is actually enabling the lives of your users or addicting them to something which they cannot get rid of later on. And secondly, privacy needs to be by design proactive, user-centric, and transparent. If you have, let's say, 5 features to prioritize, and one of them is privacy, I would say it's not a prioritization problem at all, because privacy needs to be part of the feature set. And if you're prioritizing privacy over other features, there is where the problem lies. That by inherently the functional aspect of the product, when you can say it's done, the development is done, privacy should be baked in already. So going back to the checks and balances, hope this is like tomorrow when you're thinking about the roadmap or building a feature, think about these different parameters and think about privacy. Okay, what are the different aspects of my product which would maybe leak privacy for my leak user data, and how should I prevent it? And should I do it right now, or should I just wait for some user to then file a complaint and then look into it? So these are some of the checks and balances, very important for product development. And with this, I wanted to share also more research in the market and how to make it actionable within your teams. So given that the focus on ethics is relatively new, We have certain modern companies such as Hugging Face building their own ethical charters as they work on models which will touch almost every aspect of our life. So the bottom right corner is represents the values for the project at Hugging Face, which is an ethical charter they came up with. But then also we have Institute for Ethical AI and Machine Learning. They have principles out there which you can just borrow or learn more about how to incorporate them into their product development lifecycle. And then there are ethical principles for web machine learning by the W3.org as well. So why I'm presenting this to you right now is that I presented to you a problem, I presented to you a framework, how to think about it. This is how tangible uh, changes you can make to your organization right now by maybe even collaborating with your team to come up with ethical principles which make sense for your market, for your own product. But or you can just maybe borrow or get inspired from some of the work done by these organizations already in the market. So with that, I come to the third pillar of the how to be ethical in product-led growth cycle. So we talked about customer, we talked about usage, and the foundational layer I would really say is employees. And why I say that is because personal commitment is essential to tackle such a difficult and complex topic. Now, training almost definitely in large enterprises, we have ethics training, and we usually do it whenever the fiscal year starts and there is a big mandatory checklist from the entire org that we need to finish this, and we do that 30-minute or 1 hour ethics checklist, and that's it, done for the year. Never ever think about it after that. Or what is the other alternative? Companies hire chief ethics officer or an ethics committee. At the end of the day, these things will not make a difference because ethics is very related to personal commitment. And there are these two facets which I've presented here: personal character and culture. You can, as leaders, make sure that you're selecting people with characters which have some of these fundamental values, but you definitely have a lot of control on the culture that you can create and then drive in the organization which you're working at, or you're or you own that organization. So under each of these are further tenets, as I mentioned, that under character you have empathy, morality, courage, purpose. So looking at those values and making sure that you're cultivating such values within your own team, or you're selecting people who show such kind of values or think that they're important. And on the cultural side, these are some of the things which you can do to drive culture in terms of making. I will move into two of these aspects in the next slide. But having a right mission, why as a company do we exist? Why are we building this product? Why do we need to code at all? What is the larger mission? Trust in employees, and that they can make decisions, and that it's not a political culture where it's very top to bottom, and that you're not trusting the people on the ground who are actually building technology. Then how would they have personal commitment to provide ethical value to society? Org structure, for example, also really helps in culture. Are there siloed aspects in your organization which don't talk to each other? That is another, I would say, ingredient for a bad culture and eventually unethical products out in the market. So I'll give you details into two of these tenets, but as you're getting the point, there is a lot around the whole employee aspect. So I touch upon these two tenets before we call it a day. So diversity, I think, is diversity and mental health are two aspects which really help in defining a great culture. And culture, I believe, it's very hard to sustain, but very easy to break. So making sure that there are different opinions, backgrounds, and thoughts, it would really help in making sure that you're bringing ethics into the picture as design in your organization. So the companies which I've worked with in my past and current really value diversity, and you can really see that shines in the product quality. And then mental health or work-life balance. At the end of the day, we are knowledge workers. Time management and mental health are important so that we are there and we are thinking clear and presently, which is important to make these hard decisions and make those prioritization choices when you are building your product roadmap. So that's what I had to present today. I want you to refer to great resources by Mind the Product that really also helped me go through some of the frameworks that they had around usage and customer. I also want to really thank Product Led Alliance for giving me the forum to talk about this topic, and of all the great programming they have been putting out on product management and product-led growth. And lastly, this is my personal website. Please feel free to reach out to me. I am passionate about these topics. I want to talk to like-minded people and maybe help you on the way as well. Apart from ethics, I discuss and talk about product-led growth, API development, and OKRs. So thank you for your time today. And if there are any questions or on the chat, I am happy to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, just to say thank you to you as well, Rahul, for taking us through that. I thought it was really, really interesting, and it's definitely an area that I find fascinating. And yeah, I've really enjoyed that presentation. So thank you for taking the time to share your experiences with us. There's a question in the chat. If you would like to ask yours, do drop that in there, and we will get through as many as possible in the few minutes we have remaining. So the first one is, there's a nice one there from Nikki that just says, nicely done, and thanks for a fresh and new perspective. And Vanessa says +1 as well. So the compliments are coming in thick and fast. If you have any questions, do just drop them in as well. Nabil as well saying amazingly awesome. So the question that we had before was actually from our previous speaker. So that is Sumaya Noor. And Sumaya asked, PLG is used for AI and non-AI products. How does AI ethics link with PLG in non-AI products? So I guess that was during your AI section. How do you see that crossover? I know you kind of went into that a little bit after us, maybe, but maybe just a recap there.
Yeah, so I would say I used AI as an example to kind of put forward this point about the problem. But the examples which I took were around, let's say, DoorDash, Uber, Amazon. All the unethical practices which they are doing are not really related to machine learning or AI in general. It's about not taking care of the drivers, not taking care of the delivery persons. And then the machine learning example was particularly looking at the research happening at Google, because Google is really the pioneer in machine learning and it's affecting our lives in a very deep manner. And by bringing in AI was just another aspect to how ethics is getting misused in technology. And at the end of the day, the framework which I presented, which is thinking about customer usage and employees, is agnostic to machine learning or any particular technology. It is pretty high level and can be applied to many facets of product development and in different industries, I would say. So hope that clarifies that. I'm happy to get back to you if I have follow-up questions on that. But I really want to make sure that ethics is important all around. AI is where we are going, and if a very beloved leading company like Google cannot also control problems around ethics, how will small startups around AI are going to really have some, value associated with ethics when they bring out products for the market? How you relate ethics with marketing or even business? That is the next question by Naval.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes. So I would say marketing or business is part of the customer point, which I mentioned. In the customer point, I mentioned usage and revenue as the two pillars within the customer point. And that is where I'm saying is that business and marketing are important data points. But at the end of the day, if you're not building product for a user, if you're building a product which is just going to stay on the shelf, and believe me, in the B2B enterprise world where I operate, there's a lot of software which is created to be put on the shelf. It never gets used. So that is where I see is that taking them as marketing data points, making product for the user, and then again leveraging marketing business to make sure that we evangelize and put that value as loudly, I would say, in front of the users. And any organization in the world you think is on the scale of 10 is ethical?
I think the idea being that are there any organizations that you would give a 10 out of 10 in terms of ethics to? Maybe it's something that every company can improve. I'm not sure what your thoughts on that were.
I would not say 10 out of 10. Otherwise, we should just all go home and just call that company and say that, can you give us a recipe for us to follow? But I would say Hugging Face is right there in terms of company, which is right in their name. There is ethics, because they could have been, they are building cutting edge technology in AI around transformers and building the infrastructure for machine learning. They could have named themselves anything in the world. But the name itself is bringing the aspect that our models are for the good of the society. And Mitchell, the researcher from Google, who was fired, eventually joined Hugging Face, and Hugging Face have their own, I would say, ethical charter. So of all the companies right now, I would say they are really doing good, but there are other companies as well. And I would say people in this presentation right now listening to the recording, you have an opportunity as well to make your company go from whichever level it is right now to being more ethical.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We've gone a little bit over there, but I wanted to make sure we got those questions through, so I don't mind that at all. But just to say thank you again to you, Rahul. I thought that was a really, really interesting topic and a really important one as well. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
And don't forget, everyone, we will be back tomorrow with more fantastic content from the Product-Led Festival. We're kicking off at 3 p.m. European time, 2 p.m. UK, 9 a.m. Eastern, and not 2. I can't do the maths in my head clearly. 9 a.m. Eastern, and you can join us later on the West Coast, 6 a.m. West Coast. So all that leaves me to say is a reminder: join us then, whatever time you can. We've got the announcement for the PLA Awards 2022 that will be taking place tomorrow. So do tune in to find out who has won those as well. I look forward to seeing you then. Have a great rest of the evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.